So Stuart and I are both interested in the idea that we can think of our environment as something which is sonic, and especially the way that we engage with the spaces around us, so architectural space. And our work it investigates the ways in which we can get people listening to space and understanding space as something which is sonic. So kind of the idea of providing a new perspective, a new way to engage with our spatial environment, and the idea of sound as a language to explore and maybe understand our environment in a different way to how we normally might.
So I essentially look at the more scientific side of music creation, and I'm very interested in exploring the acoustic qualities of space. And one of the things which I wanted to explore in this project was how we can turn the character of a space into a piece of music. And so when I first met Alex, we started working together on performing acoustic measurements and sort of working out how the information sort of related to the site. And one of the things we found was, one of the main or prominent features was the resonant frequencies. And upon walking around the space, we became very aware of how dramatic the effect was on your experience of like the spatial environment. And so we started discussing how we could start to present this as a piece of music or some other form of creative outlet.
There are two really important steps here. The first step is the idea that every space has these resonant frequencies. Well, how do you extract those? How do you find out what they are? And one is this idea of singing in the shower. So you move your voice around and you hear some notes sound louder than others. We do this on a huge scale, using big loudspeakers and microphones, using something which is called an impulse response. And that takes a sweep of the space, and a computer program then is able to tell us what the main resonant frequencies of the space are. We make the space speak by playing these frequencies back into it. But what's really interesting, and I think what one of the main inspirations behind this piece is when you play a frequency back into the space, it creates a standing wave which is an interference pattern. So it's a pattern of loud and quiet spots of sound. It's almost like a map of sound that you can physically move through. And this is a map which is both related to this particular resonance, but the distribution of sound in the space is linked entirely to the architecture. So this is something which is completely representational of the architectural layout of the space, and we wanted to use this in different ways and find ways to get audiences to engage with this.
As we've worked on this for quite a few years, we kind of know what to expect when you walk through the space and what to hear, and I think we mulled over the idea of like, how can you present this to an audience and then come away and understand what they've heard and how that relates to the site. And I think we had a few sessions where we discussed it, and we kind of came to the realization, what is your sort of dominant sense? And a lot of people use their eyes more than their ears, and you know, in their day-to-day lives often walk through spaces and don't really consider the audible quality of the space. And as we've worked on this for a while, we've started to really appreciate, you know, like those day-to-day spaces, and quite often laugh about like being really nerdily interested in, you know, like a corridor that we've just walked through or something. And so we were then trying to work out how can you present that to an audience, and so we thought about the fact that you can then transform sound into colour, adding a visual guide to the frequencies which you're hearing, and these are helping you sort of understand the spatial distribution of sound within a space. And because we've selected frequencies which are the character of the space essentially, the app on your phone essentially works as a map.
We wanted the space to be explored through people listening to this map and moving around the space, but we also wanted to make it evident that this map was there, and this wasn't some sort of composition, it was all coming out of the space. And so Stuart developed an iPhone application which converts frequency to colour and brightness to loudness or amplitude. And what happens as you walk into the space is the space is completely black. There's speakers in the centre playing out these resonant frequencies, and you move around this map of sound. As you do so, you've got your phone in your hand, and the phone is the colour of the screen of the phone is changing as you move through the space. basically uncovering the areas of sound. Then we have a fisheye camera attached to the ceiling facing down at the audience. What it does is it picks up this movement, it picks up this changing colour and the way that people are moving and listening and interacting and moving through the space. And it projects that onto one of the walls of the theatre and basically picks up the trails. So the trails remain, and gradually the map you see this projection kind of populating with colour and lines. And what happens over time is that this map of resonance in the space is made visual. And it's made visual by people's processes of movement, engagement and listening. So what we're trying to demonstrate is the way in which people are uncovering a space through listening. The visual aspect of this installation, all it serves to do is represent people's processes of listening and understanding a space as a product of sound or through sound.